Hi, this is Sarah Lacy, Backstage with a man that certainly needs no introduction to the New York tech scene, Fred Wilson of Union Square Ventures. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good. Thanks for being back. You were here on Monday and you're back to do the big judging this afternoon,
Yeah,
right?
it's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, we'll get into the companies in a minute.
Right.
While you're here, I wanted to talk to you about a post that you wrote a while ago that I keep thinking about because I keep seeing companies that are interesting that fit into this. And it's this idea that a lot of the early web apps were built by very technical people, and so they're really built for early adopters and that typical sort of Silicon Valley personality. But increasingly the big opportunity is building apps for the rest of us, kind of building things for middle America, things that come out of that. I'm curious, since you've written that, how you've sort of thought more about that trend, if there are things you've seen that have come out of it, if it means we'll see more good startups coming from places like Chicago, like Groupon did.
Yeah, well, I definitely think that, just solving people's everyday needs. I need to get a car loan, a house loan. I need to figure out how to manage my budget. I need to figure out how to get my kid into college. These are like big pain points for people. Mm-hmm. And if you think about the really big companies that have come out of the internet community in the past 5 years, they're not solving that problem.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs to go solve real problems that real people have.
Do you think those companies are going to come out of New York or San Francisco, or do you think they're going to come out of, let's just give a shout out to my hometown, Memphis, Tennessee?
Ooh, Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, there's a cool company called Backupify.
Mm-hmm.
We're not investors in it, but it's basically, you got all this stuff now at Google and, WordPress and Twitter, and if you want to back it all up, you use Backupify, and they're from Nashville, I think. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure, but I think they're from Nashville. So I definitely think that you'll see more companies coming from other parts of the states than just New York, San Francisco, Boston, Austin, Boulder, which have kind of been the sort of the tech hubs.
Right. Well, we have to ask one question about the New York scene, which, you're probably sick of being asked about. We've been talking about for 3 days now here at Disrupt. But, my question is you're always put up as the guy who's sort of the cheerleader for this scene and the evangelist.
Right.
And you've been, a phenomenally successful VC. This morning we had some data showing Union Square Ventures was one of the most ascendant firms in terms of peer review.
I'd rather be ascendant than descendant.
Wouldn't we all? That's the good thing about being a new firm. That's what Andreessen always says.
Exactly.
All up from here.
Exactly.
But your biggest wins are still Silicon Valley companies, right?
The two companies that we're most known for, Twitter and Zynga, are Silicon Valley companies. But the next 5 companies in our portfolio that people might know about, Etsy, Tumblr, Indeed, Foursquare, these are all New York companies. Mm-hmm. So the next wave of companies that are going to become big return generators for Union Square Ventures are actually not Bay Area companies. There are a couple great Bay Area companies too. I really get nervous about rating our portfolio.
At some point it's silly being purely geographic. Right. There's a reason you don't invest that way.
Right, exactly.
What do you think is going to be the first New York company that's going to be the big in terms of returns? Foursquare has been very big in terms of attention. It's a darling of the scene. Tumblr certainly has people who are sort of rabid fan bases, but neither have really done a lot of the business front. And I realize they're still new companies, but who do you think is really going to be the one to prove you can build a big business out of New York?
It depends on what kind of business you want to build. Gilt Group has built a huge business, but they are in that same general category as things like Groupon and Living Social, slightly different, but in that sort of social commerce area. And they built a huge business. So I think you got to talk about Gilt Group. We in terms of like core tech, we have a company in our portfolio called 10gen, which makes a database called MongoDB, which I think is the next MySQL. That could be a humongous New York success story in tech, as opposed to media or finance or.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, I'm really excited about 10gen.
All right, well, let's talk about the finalists for today. We've got Duat, BillCard, GetAround, Sonar, Invoice ASAP. What's the one I'm forgetting?
You're forgetting CC Loop.
CC Loop. Break them down. Who do you like, who do you not like? And we'll bear in mind you're still going to see a final demo, so someone can still change your mind, but maybe this will give a hint.
So I'm a big fan of Airbnb and peer-to-peer marketplaces, so The GetAround team is doing that for cars, and I think that's a cool idea. So that's definitely, you know, one that kind of is in my sweet spot that I like.
Would you use it?
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Do you have a sweet car that we can all borrow?
Yeah, I got a sweet car you can borrow. I have a Jeep. I have a Jeep Wrangler 4-wheel drive out in Long Island that I would let anybody use.
I'm not sure that was what I was thinking when I thought sweet.
I think it's sweet. I like it.
What about the upcoming Zynga IPO car? Are you going to get a special one there?
Is Zynga going public?
That's what Kara Swisher says.
Oh, so if Kara Swisher says it's true?
I mean, we don't believe that at TechCrunch, but there are people who believe it.
I like Kara, by the way. I'm a huge Kara fan. I'm a huge Sarah fan.
Too.
I like
You,
I like tech reporters who are women whose names end in
yeah, which rhyme. So if there was a Tara, say, at GigaOM, you would
big
like her
fan,
as well.
big fan of Tara at GigaOM.
Well, Ohm just raised $4 million, so he can go hire a Tara.
Look, all this news I don't even know about.
Dude, you got to read TechCrunch. You got to read TechCrunch.
I only do that once a day. News is happening so fast.
You can't do it once a day. You got to do it once a minute. All right. So you said GetAround. Any other thoughts on the other ones?
You know, there's a couple of utility companies, things like Invoice ASAP, CC Loop, and BillCard. I think BillCard's interesting. I think that one, you know, people are always apprehensive that they're getting ripped off, and no one has time to like pour through their bills and stuff. I think it's solving a real problem. I like that.
What I like about BillCard, I think it's one of the only ones that really reaches across demographics.
Right.
I mean, it was interesting to see on the panel, like Susan Lin, who, you know, I don't know how much money she has, but it's probably a lot, immediately said, I would sign up for this today because I have so many things I'm being charged. Like, she was probably not the demographic they were thinking of. I think, you know, my parents would sign up for this. My husband would love this. He's one of those
no
people
one
who
likes getting ripped
obsesses over
off,
bills.
right?
Yeah, it's something that's universal.
Right.
It's something that, like, everyone can get behind.
Exactly.
No more rip-offs.
Exactly.
In general, are you very bullish about finance sort of finally getting fundamentally disrupted by the web?
Yeah,
That's been one of those sectors that hasn't.
Well, there's a
been
New York
hit.
company called Bank Simple. We're not an investor in it. That's a theme, by the way. You see how many companies we're not investors in that are great companies? It's hard.
Well, you don't have the Dave McClure strategy.
No, and it's also hard to get invested in the good companies. Everybody knows who they are.
Even for you?
For everybody. It's hard for everybody.
So Bank Simple.
Bank Simple, they're trying to build a internet bank that has a different value proposition than a traditional bank, and that's a cool company. And there's all sorts of people who are doing things in peer-to-peer lending. You know, that's been around for a long time, but I think that's a very interesting sector. And, you know, look, I mean, the banks totally screwed up in 2008 and 2009, so nobody's interested in helping the banks anymore.
Well, and we've got to be to the point finally where we're willing to try to trust an internet company when the banks have been so untrustworthy. I mean, in the 90s, it was this thing of like, well, do I really want to trust my finances?
Right.
You know, it was kind of a cultural battle, I think, that they had to face.
Yeah, people didn't even want to put their credit cards on the internet.
Right.
You know? So yeah, I think we made a lot of progress.
You pro Square? You think Square's going to be a big company?
I am a huge Jack Dorsey fan, and I think he's got 2 winners on his hands. We're not investing in Square.
Apparently, since he's back at Twitter. Come on, there's no way he's doing 2 roles at 2 companies.
Well, I think, you know, so at Twitter, there's a guy named Satya who runs product, and Jack manages product, but Satya's day-to-day, and at Square, he's got Keith. You know, so I think you can do that as long as you have a good team that can execute the vision. I think you could be a visionary leader in maybe more than 2 companies if you had the right team underneath you.
Keith was here earlier and he said that he said, first of all, he is not a product visionary, which is one reason he doesn't found companies. He goes to companies. He said he thinks Jack is one of the rare product visionaries in the industry. How many true product visionaries do you think there are in consumer internet right now?
Well, I think we have at least a dozen in our portfolio. I mean, there are some amazing product visionaries in our portfolio. I think you have to admit Dennis Crowley's a product visionary.
Absolutely.
I think David Karp at Tumblr is a product visionary. I think Rob Kalin at Etsy is a product visionary. Jack Dorsey's a product visionary. You kind of even got to give Pincus credit, right? I mean, you know, he sort of came up with social gaming. So, you know.
Well, he in Asia.
He Americanized it and Facebookized it.
He did. And you know, it took a guy who wasn't a hardcore gamer to do it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I asked him. I said, well, you know, you're not a gamer. He is a gamer actually. He loves to play games, but he never
board
worked.
games and
he
stuff,
never worked
not
in the
like-
game industry,
yeah.
and he said this is as much about social networking as it is about games, and he was right about that.
And I guess that was visionary.
That was visionary.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be all interested to see who you cast your vote for. We won't know really, but we'll be interested to see who winds up winning. And thanks for hosting us again in your city for our second Disrupt.
Yeah, in an airplane hangar or something like that.
Something with awful acoustics and
Horrible.
birds that keep flying in.
Birds.
Yeah,
Cool.
we've had a couple birds.
All right.
They're tech fans.